In the depths of winter 1938, a chilling tale unfolded in Kingston, Pennsylvania. A young woman, full of life and promise, answered a phone call, believing it was the start of a new career. Instead, it marked the beginning of a haunting mystery that has resisted the relentless march of time for over 8 decades. This wasn't just a disappearance. It was a brutal, calculated act that shattered a family and left an entire community gripped by fear. This is the story of Margaret Martin. Hello, friends. My name is Marcia, and this is Midwest Murders, where we explore the unsolved cases that still haunt America. In 1938, Pennsylvania, much like the rest of the United States, was still reeling from the devastating impact of the Great Depression. High unemployment rates and widespread poverty cast a long shadow over communities, especially those reliant on industrial sectors like coal mining and steel production, which were particularly hard hit. It was a time of immense economic struggle, where the promise of a job, any job, became a beacon of hope. Against this backdrop of national hardship, and with the ominous rumblings of World War II beginning to shape global discussions, 19-year-old Margaret Martin embodied the quiet hopes of her close-knit family, rooted in the heart of Kingston. Margaret was a striking 5'3" brunette. Just 3 weeks prior, she had graduated with honors from the Wilkes-Barre Business College, where she had taken secretarial classes, and she was eager to start her career. She lived with her parents, John, a local mine foreman and minor politician, and Agnes, a homemaker, along with her 3 younger siblings in a modest blue and white home at 43 Covert Street. Her parents described Margaret as a living saint. She was a shy, studious, and friendly girl who cherished her many friends. A devout Catholic, she regularly attended St. Ignatian's Church, where she also taught Sunday school. She was, by all accounts, a model young woman, focused on her future. On a cold Saturday morning, December 17th, Margaret received a phone call at a neighbor's home around 9 a.m. This wasn't unusual, as her family didn't have a telephone themselves. The caller introduced himself as R.B. Davis and claimed he was setting up an insurance company and needed a stenographer. Crucially, he added that she had been referred to him through the Wilkes-Barre Business College. Davis told Margaret he wanted to interview her, but claimed he was unfamiliar with the area and wouldn't be able to find her home. They agreed to meet in Kingston Corners, and she would then ride with him back to her home for the interview. Thrilled at the prospect of perhaps landing a job right before the holidays, Margaret excitedly told her mother she'd be right back and left her home. A young woman stepping out with hope, unaware of the horror that awaited her. From their apartment window overlooking Kingston Corner, Mr. and Mrs. William Agraflotus and their daughter Mary saw a young woman they believed was Margaret getting into an automobile. They later described the driver as a young man about 26 years old, dressed in a brown suit, driving a 1937 or 38 black coupe. The car had several distinctive features. It had no spare tire, heavy-duty tires in the rear, and lighter tires in the front. After Margaret entered, the car turned right onto Market Street in front of the Wyoming Seminary, heading toward the small town of Lucerne. This would be the last time Margaret Martin would ever be seen alive. When she didn't return home by the afternoon, her worried parents reported her missing. The search for Margaret began. Still, the timing worked against them. A newspaper strike was underway, and news of her disappearance didn't spread the way it normally would have. Those first hours passed quietly. Then, 4 agonizing days later, on Wednesday, December 21st, 19-year-old Anthony Razakowski was setting muskrat traps near Marcus Hollow Bridge, a common activity in the rural area. While sliding down the steep bank of Keelersburg Creek, he spotted something in the icy waters, a hand protruding out of what was later described as a feed or grain sack. The chilling discovery sent him racing to phone authorities, and the search for the missing girl had instantly become a murder investigation. Major William A. Clark with the Pennsylvania State Police immediately took charge of the investigation into Margaret's disappearance, and now her brutal murder. As the public became aware, witnesses began to come forward, and an initial theory emerged. An unidentified witness overheard a well-spoken man, 25 to 30 years old, 5'11", and slightly on the heavy side, at a Kingston drugstore payphone, making the appointment with Margaret. Other young women also reported being approached in the same manner as Margaret by a similar-looking man who used a similar ploy to get them in the car. He would tell them that he needed approval from his Scranton office before he could hire them in order to get them in the car. It was later determined that the names of young women seeking employment from legitimate agencies were being given out to individuals calling with job prospects, a disturbing vulnerability of the era. Due to these similarities in the known operations of a white slave ring working in the Wilkes-Barre area, police initially settled on the theory that Margaret was abducted for that purpose. This immediate focus shaped the early days of the investigation, leading authorities to question known sex offenders and thoroughly investigate roadhouses and houses of ill repute. The Scranton Tribune even boldly predicted that Margaret's killer would be arrested within 24 hours. This, tragically, would prove false when no suspects were identified. But a crucial contradiction emerged early on. Margaret's father, John Martin, staunchly disagreed with the white slave ring theory. He felt the perpetrator was someone the family knew. He was convinced that Margaret, being a shy and prudent girl, would not have gone to meet a total stranger making a telephone appointment. He believed she knew or had seen the man before. This parental intuition, standing against the official theory, highlights the inherent complexities and disagreements that can arise in a high-profile investigation. After the horrific discovery of Margaret's body, the search became massive, involving the Pennsylvania Motor Police, Kingston Borough Police, and National Guardsmen who tramped through 3 inches of freshly fallen snow and overgrown thickets, searching every hunting cabin and farm building in the area. Due to the isolated location where Margaret was found, near the edge of Keelersburg on an old connecting road 800 feet off the new highway, police speculated that the killer was familiar with the area. They believed the killer had driven his car within about 75 yards of the small footbridge and then carried Margaret's body to the creek. The only sign of human habitation visible from the old footbridge was a barn on a distant hillside. The relocation of the bridge years earlier left the old bridge overgrown with brush. It's chilling to consider that if not for Anthony Rakowski's discovery, Margaret's body may have gone unnoticed for years. Once Major Clark arrived at the location of Margaret's body, the true horror of the scene unfolded. Margaret was found in a dark brown burlap sack with red stripes measuring 5 feet by 2 feet, commonly used for fertilizer or coffee. Her body was submerged in about 18 inches of water, her knees drawn up under her chin. She was completely nude and had been sexually assaulted. The bag had been stitched closed and was bound with clothesline. One hand was sticking out. The sheer brutality of this scene speaks to a rage far beyond a simple abduction. An autopsy confirmed Margaret had been strangled to death. She had a black eye, bruises on her throat and body, and a deep knife gash across her abdomen and below her right knee. Doctors felt a crude attempt was made to dismember her after death. Suspecting the unique sack might be a crucial lead, police traced its distribution to CFL cooperatives. These specific bags were exclusively available at 2 local stores. Unfortunately, this seemingly solid lead did not produce any meaningful results. Benjamin K. Lee, an expert on rope, was brought in to examine the clothesline that bound the bag, but it too yielded no results. What today might be pivotal evidence quickly became a dead end. In the frantic weeks that followed, it seemed like the police were on the verge of a major breakthrough. About 15 miles from the creek, investigators descended upon a sawmill in the mountains of Forkston. Inside a steam boiler, they found charred scraps of metal that seemed to be the key to the entire mystery. Initial reports circulated quickly, claiming these were the remnants of ornaments Margaret had been wearing on the day she vanished. But as the investigation deepened, this promising lead began to fall apart. While early accounts linked the metal directly to Margaret, a later, more definitive investigation delivered a devastating blow. Those metal fragments and subsequent cloth found nearby had no connection to Margaret. The sawmill, once thought to be the definitive scene of the crime, turned out to be another agonizing dead end. This revelation didn't just stall the search, it stripped away the one piece of physical evidence that seemed to point toward a specific location. On December 28th at 2 p.m., an inquest was held in the furniture store of coroner Ray Greenwood. Spectators jammed every available inch of the small back room where 15 witnesses testified for 90 minutes. The jury, composed of 4 men and 2 women, rendered their verdict without hesitation: murder by strangulation by an unknown person. Margaret's murder sent shockwaves through the community. The Harrisburg Telegraph was quick to use the tragedy to question a recent decision to merge the state police with the Highway Patrol, suggesting the murder would have been easily solved had the merger not occurred. On street corners and hotel lobbies and storefronts, talk quickly turned from the happiness of the holiday season to the tragic murder. Hundreds of people attended Margaret's funeral mass at St. Ignatius Church in Kingston on Christmas Eve. Plainclothes police officers were also present, discreetly hoping to notice anyone suspicious among the mourners. She was buried in the church cemetery in adjoining Pringle Township. The public outrage and grief were so profound that on December 28th, Pennsylvania State Senator Leo C. Mundy announced he would introduce a bill in Margaret's honor. This bill would make sex crimes punishable by execution, require registration for all sex offenders, and mandate that physicians, welfare, and social service workers report anyone with tendencies towards such offenses. This reflects the extreme fear and desire for drastic action that gripped the community in the wake of such a heinous crime. By the beginning of 1939, most clues pertaining to Margaret's murder had proven useless, and while the manhunt for the killer was still ongoing, police had not turned up any more information. For years, the case remained a chilling mystery. Then in September 1942, nearly 4 years after Margaret's murder, a glimmer of hope appeared. Orban Taylor, a dishonorably discharged veteran from New York City, confessed to Margaret's murder. However, Taylor's admission quickly unraveled. After 10 hours of questioning, his confession was proven to be false, and he was not charged. As the years rolled on, Margaret's murder became a haunting puzzle, resisting the efforts of investigators and the march of time. In 1999, Lucerne County District Attorney Peter Paul Olszewski conceded that chances of unraveling the identity of Margaret's killer were slim, a mystery likely buried in the annals of time, the identity of the perpetrator shrouded in darkness. There are several points about this case that make me wonder. Margaret's father's conviction that she knew or had seen the man before is a powerful counterpoint to the stranger abduction theory. Could R.B. Davis have been a pseudonym for someone she vaguely recognized, making her more comfortable getting into his car? This tension between the official theory of a white slave ring abduction and her father's belief in a more personal connection is crucial to understanding why the case may have remained unsolved. If police focused too heavily on a broad slave ring, they might have missed a local connection. The sheer brutality of Margaret's assailant suggests something far more personal and horrific than a simple abduction for sale into a white slave ring. This points to either intense rage, an attempt to conceal identity through mutilation, or profound depravity. The killer drove her to an isolated location, likely indicating prior knowledge of the area, reinforcing the local connection idea. The failure of leads like the distinctive burlap sack and the clothesline is frustrating. These were specific, tangible pieces of evidence that, in a modern investigation, would be gold mines. In 1938, the limitations of forensic science meant these trails quickly went cold. The early period of the investigation, marked by conflicting theories and fruitless searches, set the stage for the decades of silence that followed. Was the focus misplaced? Were the resources, though significant for the time, simply inadequate to cover the cleverness of the killer, or the limitations of the era? In the collective memory of a community and the pages of history, Margaret Martin's story endures, a somber reminder of a life stolen and a crime unsolved. A promising young woman, lured by the promise of a job in a difficult era, met a horrific end. The investigation, while intense, was ultimately frustrated by the limitations of the time, false leads, and a false confession. Was R.B. Davis a local predator or a transient evil? And what does it mean for a community when such a brutal crime leaves only silent shadows and unanswered prayers for over 8 decades? Margaret's story remains frozen in time, a reminder that some crimes don't fade, they wait. If you have any thoughts or theories about this case, please leave them in the comments below. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and may the truth reveal itself in the shadows.